I've been teaching the LSAT for almost 20 years now. I brought my LSAT score from a 152 to a 175 on LSAT test day. Logic games started off as my worst section. It later became my best section. Students who score in the 170s have historically gotten perfect on games, maybe -1, and lost most of their points on each of the other sections. The thing is, logic games are no longer on the test, which means you should not be studying logic games if you're taking the LSAT in 2025, or for that matter, the remainder of 2024. In 2025, the currently published LSAT test dates are January, February, April, and June. January and February are totally fine if you're applying to law school to start law school in the fall of 2025. April and June are a bit late. You may want to wait a cycle if that's the case, but regardless, what you should not be studying and what you should be studying doesn't really change. You don't want to be using outdated LSAT prep materials that cover logic games, since logic games are no longer on the test. And I found that a lot of books out there, like the LSAT Trainer by Mike Kim, they cover logic games still, they're not up to date, and they give a bit more emphasis on formal logic than they might otherwise would, because logic games were on the test when the book was written, but now of course are no longer on the test. So you want to make sure that you're using up-to-date LSAT prep materials, whether it's books or courses, or of course, personalized one-on-one coaching. Logic games are no longer on the test. Additionally, the thing is, logic games have been replaced with a second scored logical reasoning section. So you should be devoting at least 2/3 of your LSAT prep on average to the logical reasoning section. Now, you want to consider that there are roughly 15 different types of logical reasoning questions, but not all of them are equally important. Some question types are more frequent than others. For example, necessary assumption, inference, and flaw are a lot more common than rare types like parallel, parallel flaw, and evaluate the argument. So not only do you want to completely disregard logic games in your LSAT prep, and you want to throw out your books that reference logic games, you want to devote less time to the less common types of logical reasoning questions. Every LSAT question is worth the same. You want to lock up your easy points on the easy types of logical reasoning questions and save the tougher ones for last, and only work on the tougher ones when you're already scoring quite well. And by quite well, I mean at least 165 or above on your practice tests. If you are below 165, there's probably some foundational work yet to be done on the more common types like necessary assumption, inference, and flaw, of which there are going to be multiple of each per logical reasoning section, whereas say for parallel reasoning questions, there are only going to be typically max 2 of them per section. Now, you don't want to spend too much time on reading comp because it's only 1/3 of the test, whereas in contrast, logical reasoning is 2/3. So any gains you make in your understanding of logical reasoning will be doubled across the 2 sections, and there is a lot of crossover between logical reasoning and reading comp. So some of the tougher types of reading comprehension questions, like analogy questions or method of reasoning questions or role of statement questions, also have their parallels, of course, in LSAT logical reasoning. So as you get better at LSAT logical reasoning parallel questions, you will similarly get better at reading comp analogy, aka parallel reasoning questions as well. Now, don't use any of those older prep books that are out of date, the hand-me-downs from your older sibling who went to law school 3 to 5 years ago. Your friend, not relevant. Use materials up to date for 2024, 2025, and beyond that reflect the new LSAT format without logic games, with more focus on logical reasoning. And you want to keep all of this in mind when you are crafting your LSAT study plan. It is incredibly important to have a plan of attack so that you're not falling into the default approach of taking test after test after test, measuring your results, being happy or sad about those results, and then moving on to the next. This risks burning through valuable practice material, and LSAT has significantly reduced the number of practice tests available because when they changed the LSAT format, they also renumbered and reorganized all of the LSAT prep tests. There used to be nearly 100 numbered LSAT prep tests. Now there are only about 60 numbered LSAT prep tests, and you will get through them faster than you think, especially if you've got a relatively longer LSAT prep timeline. If you're taking the LSAT only 2 months from now, you're likely not going to work through all 60 LSAT prep tests. But if you're taking the LSAT 3, 4, 5, 6 months from now, you then become increasingly likely to burn through those practice tests, and you want to make sure that you're working through them deliberately with a plan. At LSAT Unplugged, we will create for you a personalized day-by-day study plan as part of our LSAT coaching programs. Whether you're in the small group program or the private one-on-one program, either way, we craft a plan of attack for you to help you on the path to 170 plus on the LSAT. You can check out the links below this video to find out more and to book a call with me and my team. We'd be glad to help you out. Regardless of what your plan looks like, you're going to want to make sure that you build that foundation first before you drill questions by type and before you take those full-length timed practice tests. I strongly discourage taking cold diagnostics because they tell you what you already know. You haven't learned the language of the LSAT yet, but you can. Anyway, folks, that's all for now. In the meantime, I wish you all the best and take care.